Do you want to make your case against Islam as strong as possible? I've seen Muslims say that they want to make their case against Islam as strong as possible for the purpose of using that info with Muslims to help them reject Islam. Uh, this line of logic is a mistake, and the rest of this post explains why it's a mistake and what to do instead. Ideas can and should be rejected for having even just one flaw, no matter how small or weak it is. Either the supposed flaw is actually a flaw and the theory should be rejected, or it's not a flaw and the theory should not be rejected for that supposed flaw. So there's only two possibilities: flawed or not flawed, or rather, known to be flawed and known to be not flawed. Thinking in terms of strong and weak arguments is a philosophical mistake that Karl Popper discovered many, many decades ago. Now, uh, this is how scientists treat scientific theories in all the fields that we call science. When we find a flaw, we reject the theory. Sometimes we can recover the rejected theory by changing something about it so that it no longer has the flaw that we saw in the predecessor theory. This means we have a new theory that isn't refuted by the flaw in the predecessor theory. So you don't need to make a case that is as strong as possible. Just one flaw is enough to reject a theory. Of course, Muslims don't believe this, and many ex-Muslims also don't believe it. Uh, but then that's where the heart of the disagreement is. Your disagreement is not mainly about whether or not Islam is true. Your disagreement is mainly about how we're supposed to judge theories in general, regardless of which theories we're considering, like Muhammad's Islam or Einstein's general relativity. If you do not come to mutual understanding and agreement about this central issue, about how knowledge works in general, then you will not be coming to mutual understanding and agreement about Islam or any other theory. If anybody does come to agreement about Islam without first having agreement about how knowledge works in general, that was just pure luck. You played the lottery and you won. This is a more general way of saying if you all don't agree about how science works, then you won't agree about supposed scientific claims in the Quran. I see Muslims and ex-Muslims discussing scientific claims in the Quran, and I've noticed that most ex-Muslims do not address the elephant in the room, which is that the Quran is anti-scientific in many, 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 many ways. Um, I talk about that somewhere else. Another post related to this said, "The only way to undermine the faith of a religious person is to meet them where they stand." I agree with this. And note, it applies to literally everything, not just religious stuff. We have to meet people where they stand if we want an opportunity to help them change their mind. And I think most ex-Muslims get it wrong. They will try to convince Muslims without even asking the Muslims what their ideas are. They just go straight into criticizing Islam without first asking things like, why do you believe in Islam? What would change your mind about Islam? And this process makes no sense. Instead, what needs to happen is for the ex-Muslim to prompt the Muslim to explain their ideas, and then for the ex-Muslim to address those specific ideas. And the reverse is the same issue. For Muslims to try to convince ex-Muslims or atheists about Islam, they need to find out what ideas the particular atheist has and then try to find flaws with those ideas. For example, I see Muslims telling ex-Muslims that they're wrong about God because materialism is wrong, while most ex-Muslims do not subscribe to materialism. You're not going to convince a non-materialist atheist that way because they already know that materialism is wrong. So I see three approaches. One, a Muslim can try to convince you, the ex-Muslim, that you're wrong about Islam, in which case he needs to ask you what your specific ideas are, and then he needs to address your specific ideas. Option two, you, the ex-Muslim, can try to convince a Muslim that he's wrong about Islam, in which case you need to ask them what their specific ideas are, and then you need to address those specific ideas. Or three, don't even have this stupid discussion because there's no the discussion doesn't meet your goals and his goals. Um, I have a recommendation for any ex-Muslims that want to improve their ability to have productive discussions with Muslims. What I recommend you do is you start a post and say that you want to do hypothetical discussions, where you play the role of Muslim and I'll play the role of ex-Muslim, and other people can chime in too, um, and go ahead and tag me if you want my help. Somebody replied, quoted me, if you do not come to mutual understanding and agreement about this central issue, about how knowledge works in general, then you will not be coming to a mutual understanding and agreement about Islam. And he says, couldn't have said it better. I want to go back to an older version of this post. Somebody says, uh, Duradir says, this is from a year ago, epistemology making a showing in the ex-Muslim subreddit. The quality of discussions here is getting higher and higher. Thank you for the praise. So I replied, my direct studying of epistemology started 12 years ago, which now is 13 years ago, I guess, which was right after I rejected Islam, which is the same year this sub started. Huh, I didn't know that. Oh, I forgot about it. I wish I had found this sub back then. I wasn't on Reddit until about a year ago, which is what, 3 years ago now. My history of learning epistemology. Uh, I remember in fifth grade that the Socratic method was being used on us. I didn't know those words back then, but I recognized it later. My university background in physics, that helped me a lot. At 32, I rejected Islam and I thought I need to rethink everything. Um, Decided I need to homeschool my kids, learned about the classical education. Then I found the book The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. Um, let's see. Then I found Ellie Goldratt. Uh, Also, he's a physicist, philosopher, business management guru. Um, and then I gave a link to my smaller article on the scientific approach. We'll talk about that later. The person says, thank you for detailing your journey. He says Popper popped up a lot in his discussions. Um, so because he mentioned Popper, I thought to mention this. You guys can pause and read it if you like. White Crow Winter again. These people did not reason themselves into this position, so it's difficult to reason them out of it. I have given people perspectives, pointed out things that were clear, but they never thought of. That is how you can create a initiating event that starts a journey toward doubt, like a seed. That can then take a long time. I also don't like discussing religious claims because the chessboard of the claims is 1,000 squares board, meaning they compensate one vague claim with another and that with another. Instead, I like to start from the beginning instead of the middle, pointing out that mental illnesses exist that and that con artists exist. Then ask them about Abraham. I remember he said this in the other post too, so I guess I'm not going to repeat it. Let's see. A lot of people seem to not even really read my post and just say they disagree. They're more like just disagreeing with the first, like the post title or the first paragraph, and then like later in the post, I said something that they agree with, but then they didn't see it or didn't notice it or something. Ooh. This is where the first time someone told me about street epistemology. Come to Speaker's Corner. I want to see how you'll debate with Muslims. I don't know what Speaker's Corner is, and I don't really debate. I think debate is nonsense. I will talk about that in the future. I wrote a post about it. It wasn't on the ex-Muslim subreddit though, but I'll make a video about that too eventually. All right, that's enough for this video.